Good afternoon and welcome to Who's Right. I'm Sandra McFadden, and welcome to a group of people that are well known in the Dane County area for getting together and expressing their opinions on the left and the right. Two of them are from the left and two of them are from the right, but you may not know who they are right away. It may take you a moment to figure that out. But this segment is called Table Talk, and we hope you will enjoy it and hope to have it again. Let me introduce you to the people that are in the group. Number one, Ron Dolan. And Ron is here with us today. And sitting next to me is Katie Songer. And on my other side is Scott Grabens. And then we have Carol Grabens. We're happy to have them here. I want to start off the conversation with you guys because I know that you get together and you do your own thing. You usually don't have a moderator, but I'll moderate today to a certain extent, but then I'm going to let you go and do your thing. But my first question to you, because today what we're talking about is the Tea Party versus Occupy Wall Street, if you can imagine. Now that's a subject to ponder. But my question is, where do you think the roots of the Tea Party come from versus the roots of the Occupy Wall Street? So does anyone have anything that they can put out there about that?
Well, I'll give it a start. I think when I hear the question, I think the roots are somewhat different. They're related but different, I think, because of the timelines. The Tea Party's certainly been around a few more years. I think the Tea Party, their roots are a lot more grounded in the idea of smaller government, to say that generically. Whereas the Occupy Wall Street being newer and in the midst of the current economy, has it's much more grounded in economic issues. And then that's not to say the Tea Party doesn't recognize those, but I think it's the timing of when they came into place. And I think the economy certainly has gotten worse since the Tea Party came into being versus now when Occupy Wall Street came into being.
Yeah, I would also say that they're strangely similar in that they're both really dissatisfied with politics as they are right now, and they don't feel represented fully, and they're both coming at this from the same perspective, but they have different goals. One wants more government intervention, and the other one wants less government.
Yeah, it seems like at least Occupy Wall Street maybe has arisen from sort of building dissatisfaction with lack of jobs and sort of ongoing economic stagnation, and just it seems like eventually that just spilled over and has become this, expression of frustration on the streets. But maybe it's been building for a couple of years.
Both are based on dissatisfaction of some sort.
Yeah.
And it builds up, and then finally, it just kind of blows up, if you want to call it. But and also, I think one of the things that I found that it was probably similar was that there's a grassroots movement to it, and that's what I see, kind of similarities for both groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they're definitely polar opposites in what their goals are.
Mm-hmm.
And that we had a forum on Tuesday about this. We had two speakers, and four of us all know this. But the one speaker for Occupy, he actually wanted he's a socialist, and so he is not necessarily representing all of the Occupy supporters, but he truly does want to see a redistribution of wealth. Mm-hmm. And then the Tea Party speaker, he's one of the leaders of the Tea Party, and he's not necessarily representing all Tea Party supporters, but he staunchly believes in free market and keeping government's hands off of the wealthy's money and everyone's wealth. So I don't know actually if the Occupy speaker is doing the best job of representing his side, because I don't think they're ever going to get to the point of where the Tea Party's at, because socialists are such a small fragment of our society right now. I don't think that many people want us to lose our capitalist structure, and whereas Tea Party, they're established already, and they have a lot of a lot of sway right now in Washington, D.C., and I just don't see how Occupy is going to get to that point without actually embracing fully capitalism. I think they're going to have to make some compromises to get to the point where they have people get elected who they support.
You had mentioned I think it was you had mentioned the sort of the boiling over effect that Occupy Wall Street seemed to grow out of, and I think that all ties into that vein. The Tea Party group has a little more structure to it, organization, I think well-defined goals, and that comes from a different tactics, maybe different approach. I'm not sure of it, but I liked what you said about the boiling over, and I think that is reflected in the idea of where we're angry about something that we're all maybe, and as a group, there's a lot of different things maybe we're angry about, but we're not. It hasn't coalesced into a finite set of actionable things. And I hadn't thought of it from the boiling over, but I think that's a good visual of it. I think that's pretty accurate.
Do you guys know how those 5 key principles of the Tea Party came about? Like, they must have at some point been at the point where Occupy Wall Street is right now, where it was just kind of an amorphous movement, expression of something but not defined.
Well, in terms of embarrassed, I can't remember all their 5 principles off the top of my head, but certainly the smaller government aspect. I think that single principle, I don't remember if that was one of the specific ones he gave that night, but I think that's certainly a thread throughout there. My feeling is that that was what it was about from day one, that there was at least that single guiding principle. And I think some of the others, as they worked through over the years and the months, and as they worked through it, now they've been through some election cycles, I think they've refined that into finer points and broken it down into maybe 5 different things. But my sense is it's been about smaller government from day one. So at least they had that one common principle.
Well, I think there was a fiscal conservative too, the part of the money. And I remember, and like I said, it's a grassroots because I have gone to the Tea Party, the rallies. And, they send you put your name in there, you look for the group, and they send an email. And there's that, they kind of, it's interesting because from the very beginning, the first rally that I attended to, there was guidelines of what you had to do. If you make a sign, don't make it bigger than this thing, or don't use a stick to it because it has to be freestanding, because we want to go into the Capitol and we don't want any of this. Make sure you bring bags if you're going to have garbage, litter, all that kind of stuff. So there was really a guideline on what they expected you to do when you went to this rally. So it was more like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing, even where you were parking and how much parking costs to you and that kind of thing. And I remember the first one I participated was during tax day, April 15th. It was the first rally. And it was in my head when I went, it was about that. It was about the economics of it. The government was spending too much money. It's our money, it's our taxes, and on top of that, they still want to tax you more. And it was like, I don't think so. Where's all the money that you already paid? You're not using it right. You're just bailing out left and right. And that was one of the things too. Like you said, they boiled over. It was like more bailouts, and it's not working. If it's not working, why do you keep doing it? And so when you go and subscribe to you go into the internet, they're publicly out there. It's like, okay, where's the next meeting? What you're supposed to do? But like I said, I remember the first time I got involved with it, it was like that. There were some guidelines to it, the purpose of the Tea Party, and that was, the small government and, less taxes. So I kind of understood what the purpose was, and then I said, you know what, this is a group that I want to go and see. And then another thing is like, I wasn't joining it. I wanted to go and see what they actually did. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I think it's worth my time to go to the other different rallies.
In some ways, that does sound similar to Occupy Wall Street's beginning, because it sounds like their guiding sort of statement is "we are the 99%." Like that's what if the Tea Party was building around kind of smaller government and conservative fiscal policy. I can't remember what you said were the 2 things right off the bat, or like reduce taxes or whatever. Smaller government. So that's like, So Occupy Wall Street is "we are the 99%," and that's the thing that's resonating with so many people. And probably the same for you when you attended the Tea Party. People are probably showing up and checking it out and then
Well,
joining.
I imagine, but you know what I had caught my attention is that I think you kind of knew those principles, and yeah, I don't want to pay more taxes. That was one of the big things. And then when Occupy was called Occupy Wall Street, it was like, and I've seen them on the different reports and videos, and they interview people, and they know why you're here. And there's just this blank on their face, you know, and I'm like, I probably would say, you know, to support, you know, a small group of people upset with, you know, paying too many taxes and small government. That would come out of my mouth originally, you know?
Yeah.
But it was like, you know, just because the neighbor, I don't know, called me, you know, and told me to be here. I don't know, if you're invited to a party, sometimes you want to know what you're invited for, in a sense.
I think right now they don't want to have bullet points at this point. They want to have something that's amorphous and that each person is an individual in the movement. Occupy hasn't nailed down their structure the way the Tea Party has.
But it's like you said.
But I don't even understand. I can understand how they're feeling, but I don't understand how the Tea Partiers can say we're, you know, taxed enough already. I don't quite understand that, because we're at, you know, historically low tax levels right now, particularly for the wealthy. I mean, Obama just extended Bush's tax cuts, so I don't understand why there's this push for even lower taxes. I mean, I'm not an economist, but at some point you have to raise them back up in order to pay for your debts and equal out what you're spending in government.
And I think that is one of the principles, like, that was something I learned at the forum, was that Occupy Wall Street does have some principles, because I remember we asked the speakers to bust common misconceptions, and he said one common misconception is that they don't have any guiding principles, and that he said they do, they're still developing them, but one is raise taxes on the wealthy, and another one was end expensive, pointless wars. I remember those two that he mentioned.
That's true.
So there are some things he's advocating for.
But they're not as congealed as the Tea Party, and they don't have one leader they can rally around. And I don't think they want that. They want to stay as grassroots as possible.
I think, though, that's similar to the Tea Party. I mean, in that respect, that the Tea Party doesn't have a single leader either, and that they're going around. So at least on that aspect, I don't see that they're different. I do think you get into tactics, and then I do want to go down that path a little bit. I think part of maybe what the difference you see in the focus, I mean, the Tea Party, when they've had events, typically they're a few hours. They're an afternoon. You go down, people with that purpose show up and do their thing, and they come home. Whereas the Occupy Wall Street, I think, frankly, have hurt themselves through the length of it, because that's where you do attract the hanger-on, somebody that wants to, maybe it'd be cool to go hang out in the park or whatever, but they're not there because of the original purpose. And I think as you extend that, it becomes this thing over weeks. That's where it does start to become more amorphous, and harder to say we're focused on these things, because anybody can come and go. And now, I mean, I'm going to go hang out for a couple hours, but I'm not really with you, and I think that makes it hard.
That's a really good point. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but like, that's an interesting thing to think about. Also with the protests back in February, I wonder if that phenomenon happened, where it was like, sometimes felt like a party. But I mean, I think that most of the protesters were focused, including, I mean, we were at that protest, but yeah, I do wonder if that happened.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, any group like that gets together, I would say it's fair to say that perhaps the majority are like that, or a large number or whatever. But I just think the longer they drag on, then inevitably it becomes something different than what it was originally. I think that's a danger of anything that goes on for weeks like that.
It's probably true, but in that regard, they're trying to show how emphatic they are and how much effort they're willing to put forth to this. And same with the Madison protests in the spring. I mean, I knew a lot of business professionals and academics that spent the night in the Capitol, and it was, self-contained. They brought their own toilet paper. They cleaned up after themselves. But it really, I mean, this could just be the media misconstruing what the reality is on the ground. I mean, the media, that's one thing I learned from the protests, is the media can dictate the conversation of how things really are when it could be something different. because Occupy might be a bunch of business professionals on Wall Street, but I'm sure there are some hangers-on. We don't know the exact situation.
Well, and to spin this back to Reach Out Wisconsin, I think that's what's neat about the group that we've had and the people that have come, because when you rely solely on the media reports, whether it's from the left or the right, there is a certain amount of bias, and it is hard to get a completely unbiased perspective, and you need to get all these different points of view. But when we get together in our sessions, you can talk about them, and you might be exposed to those different perspectives that you hadn't heard before. And I think in some ways that's the only way you're going to kind of get to the bottom of it, is if you come together and you start talking about those things and start peeling away the layers.
Because it was interesting, when we say about our personal stories, when you need to meet people, and that's what we do at Reach Out Wisconsin. Tell me your personal story so maybe I can actually find out where you're coming from. Then I talked to our speaker from Occupy Wall Street. And he grew up, the parents depending on the social services or welfare. And so I can see, where his roots are coming from. And but it was interesting to me, though, to find out that, we were talking about not having enough time to do things. And he's like, well, I have 3 jobs that I need to attend to and work. And so I did ask him, so how did you manage to go to, because he seems like he had been to different places. And that takes time and money. And if they're not being funded by anything, you know what? I mean, it's like, that maybe the 1% have really worked, it's 60, 80, 100 hours a week in order to get where they are. And then, of course, if I want to have time to camp out, I don't know if you do, but I personally don't have time. I had time to go to 2 hours for the tea party, and that was it. Other than that, I had to go and pick up the kids and continue work. So that's why I probably don't understand, why you can go, and that's just not him, but the rest of Occupy Wall Street, all those people that spend time there and complain about the greedy capitalism, and then the 1% is like, and then the tents, they probably come from some greedy company if you think about it. Somebody had to provide that food. It's another greedy company that they're calling. So for me personally, the movement is very hypocritical. You're out there with your iPads and your iPhones and your Sony cameras, and it's like that's exactly the same, thing that you're protesting against. I don't know. I think your actions work. They speak louder than your words. And to me, like I said, the movement is this. Yeah, you were upset about it. Go and do it one time, or protest one time, and then come back and maybe do it another time. But you start, trashing the place, and the same thing that I felt the same way about the Capitol. If you really have respect for the other person, or even for other people's money, you don't go out there and trash anything. I just don't think that is right. So yes, the movement, it comes out of dissatisfaction with certain issues, but your actions just don't convince me that actually that's a good thing that you're doing.
So what I'm hearing is like the dissatisfaction is with the lack of kind of jobs and the lack of money trickling down to kind of the 99%, and you're saying like, but you can see that by the actions of the Occupy Wall Street people that they're well enough off that they can take this time, and they have these goods like tents and iPods and things.
Well, and that is what I'm saying. If there were the 99%, and it's probably because I related to the people back in my home country in Guatemala. If you're 99%, you really don't even have a phone. You don't even have an iPad. Oh no, that's not even achievable. So it's like you are protesting out there about something that we don't have all the things. You do have it. You have all that stuff there. I could see there were some other people and like you say, Ron, it's like I should not go by everything that the media shows me. But I could see some people, and then they say, I have been looking for a job, I didn't finish school, and I can see where they, finding those roadblocks they don't allow them to get ahead. But in my head, I thought, and maybe because I'm a business person, I thought, okay, we have been here all these days. I want to organize a job fair. Who wants a job? Call your name. Let me see your resume. Let me help you build out a resume. See if we can get the jobs. They say there are jobs out there. They're open. Where are those jobs? Let me get. I don't know. I will organize it like that. If they were really interested in getting out where they were, or But like I said, you're right, Katie. It's like, yeah, I'm protesting against, I don't know, Apple. But I still have your iPhone and I want your iPad. But I think what they were saying is like everybody should have an iPhone and an iPad. And to me, it's like, really? No. Everybody should probably eat and meet their basic needs.
Well, people who are struggling to meet their basic needs aren't the ones who are going to be out there.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
I mean, just because you're middle class and you have fancy sneakers and an iPod doesn't mean you shouldn't be out there fighting for what you believe in. And they're representing other people than themselves.
That may not have the time. I mean, I think they're upset about the inequality, and probably some of the people that are out there protesting are upset about their own situation, and others are upset about the general income gap and inequality that they see in the country. And like, there are many people in the country who do work 60 or 80 hours a week and can barely afford to feed their families. They work multiple jobs, and they're not getting trillions of dollars in wealth for their efforts. So I mean, there is this inequality problem that is legitimate. It may not be well represented. The message of Occupy Wall Street might not it might get muddied by kind of their methods, but I think it's a good message.
And I do think that there was, and that's where at our event, when they talked about crony capitalism, Tea Party individual brought that up. And I think when you talk about the 1% and the very wealthy, and I think at least on some aspect, when you look at how did some of those people come by it, and that's where at least I think the Tea Party and the Occupy folks would agree when you get into the crony capitalism and the government starts picking those winners and who becomes part of that 1%. That's maybe at least one small part of it that we can agree on. But it's the overall notion that the economy in the United States has floated everybody up. And if we could deal with some of those higher end aspects, maybe the crony capitalism, things of that, because there's always going to be some disparity. But if we can bring the economy up, and again, that's how that rising tide floats all boats, I think that's good for everyone overall.
I agree, and that's why I was saying that it was unfortunate, possibly. I mean, it's good that Andrew said his perspective, he's a socialist, and that's fine. I mean, he has good ideals, but I don't think most people within Occupy and within even the liberal side of politics believe that we should dismantle capitalism, because in the way history has shown that we'll probably be a poorer country for it. We might even have a dictator.
By dismantling capitalism?
By dismantling capitalism. So I don't
Right.
think we want to go there. It's just, like you're saying, how can we work within the system right now to get rid of some of that crony capitalism and in my perspective, redistribute some of the wealth from the top.
I would say Congress should not make that much money, to be honest with you. I would say that, president for life, no, you have your term, then
How much do they make?
Stash your money for the future, and that's not paying you forever. And the Congress people, well, like they have health insurance forever, and no, I think that should not be allowed.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. What effect do you think that the mainstream Americans think about the movement that is going on between the Tea Party and the Occupy Wall Street? The ones that aren't involved in it and just see it on the TV, what do you think they feel about it?
I think right now they probably think Occupy Wall Street is a bunch of loonies, a little bit, honestly. And it could be partly media portrayal of these guys are just some hangers-on who are sleeping in the park. Whereas Tea Party, other folks might think they're wackos, but they've been accepted more in the mainstream, and they're deeply involved in Washington politics right now. So I think it might just be that maybe it's because they have more money, maybe it's because they have more years and organization behind them. But I think the Tea Party's been more accepted. But
You don't think so?
That's interesting that you said that, because actually it was the media that embraced Occupy Wall Street. And then it's like, that Obama supports them and everybody supports them. And it's like, for the Tea Parties, we're a bunch of racists and bigots. And it's just like, it was actually a bad, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Like coverage?
Bad coverage they gave to the Tea Party. Everything was, everything negative that they could pick out of our group, it was like they were trying to find something, trying to look for something, and they didn't find it. But it seems like, CNN was there from the very beginning, ABC, all the ones that we will call, the liberal media, they were covering and embracing Occupy Wall Street. So I have to disagree with you. Maybe we see the different champs.
Well, it's a broad brush to, I think, say the media supports the entire media. There are different avenues, there's different channels, different stations that come with different perspectives that have embraced the different movements, I think, in different ways. So I did want to point out that in reviewing some of the surveys we had from the folks that came to our meeting, and we did have some Tea Partiers there, and probably had some people that support Occupy Wall Street as well. But I think a lot of the ones I read were more of the vein of, I'm not in either party. And it was interesting, at least in that group, it seemed like several came, I read a lot that seemed sympathetic to Occupy Wall Street, and didn't know as much about the Tea Party, and I think left feeling that they understood both a lot more. And I think that was the most gratifying part of the night, was to read that maybe I came and I thought Tea Parties were wackos or whatever, and I left and I thought, well, no, maybe I don't agree with them, but they're normal people, and I understand where they're coming from. And that progression of the night, at least talking through it, I think was neat to see. So the perception outside, I think they pick on particular issues, and they have some, I agree with Occupy Wall Street on this, or I agree with Tea Party on that, but they're kind of parallel, I guess. I don't know how to quite explain it. But I think seeing people's attitudes change, or at least their perceptions through learning, was great.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. It's hard for me to answer, like, what does the mainstream think? Because we're so embedded in the liberal Madison culture, so that's not exactly mainstream America, and I don't really know what is. But definitely liberal culture in America thinks the Tea Party are out there, you know what I mean? But I noticed that too in the surveys, that there were at least a couple that said, I was surprised to see a Tea Partier that had intelligent, articulate things to say. And that was something that I didn't learn at the forum, because I had already learned it by talking to you guys, but I was really glad that other people learned it there.
I was impressed actually with Andrew. He was very articulate. It was just like, I did. He had his thoughts together and everything. And like you said, it's because probably I have seen the people dressed as zombies on TV, and I was like, I don't even know. I had never met Andrew, so he was well thought. They put together. And of course he's a writer, so that probably helps a lot. So. And
Andrew was our speaker for Occupy Wall Street. So he was the individual who came and spoke on behalf. And
I'm sorry.
So Andrew Cole, I believe, and then Ross Brown was our speaker for
the Tea Party.
We the People, the Republic, and the Tea Party. So
They both did an excellent job.
Yeah, they were great.
Well, how do you think these movements will affect the outcome of the presidential race in 2012? What do you think that's going to bring from these? Because the Tea Party movement will undoubtedly become more active as the election approaches, and I think Occupy Wall Street is not going to go away. So how do you think these two groups will affect the outcome of the election, or incite it, maybe is the better word?
I feel like Occupy is going to do two things. They're going to stir up some feelings in liberals that, I do deep down feel some angst about the disparity in our society right now, and we should, tax the rich a little more, take away their ability to freely, those who own large corporations, to freely, contribute money to campaigns as they feel free, as their freedom of speech, even as a corporation. Like I feel that there is some wrongs out there. However, from the opposite side, Occupy might be seen as a fringe group, and conservatives might say, there's no way I'm going to vote for anyone that Occupy is supporting. So I think it's going to sort of counterbalance. Occupy is not really going to have a net effect on the election, whereas Tea Party is going to just, rev it up, the political engine, the campaign machine against Obama for, healthcare and the bailouts and the economy.
I'd agree with that. I think the Tea Party certainly has, and that goes back to the length of time. I mean, they've had the time to organize. The folks have been following issues longer, and as a group, so that they're inevitably better positioned to make their voices heard in the next election. The Occupy Wall Street, and that's, I agree. It's hard to say what they're going to do, because even as our speaker, and he really, they on one hand were trying to seem shy away from any party, or to say we don't. I mean, even at the introduction game, he talked about being a recovering Democrat. He didn't want anything to do there, and so I mean, it's a weird. And to be fair, and there are Tea Partiers that will say they're not Republicans, and they're not. So, but it just the Occupy Wall Street, just again the focus. It's hard to say. Will they get gelled?
Political.
Yeah, and get focused enough to maybe get behind a candidate, and will that candidate want them behind them? And those are probably some questions for Tea Party or Republicans that have a Tea Party supporter. Do they want that or not? But I Occupy Wall Street is such a question that's up in the air. It's hard to say. It's like they are too amorphous right now.
Yeah,
So
will they actually last? Are they here to stay, or is it just something that's just erupted and it's going to go away?
Well, I wanted to say earlier, you were saying that you thought that something you said earlier sounded like you thought they weren't going to last or something, and I kind of disagreed with that. Like, I think one thing Andrew pointed out at the forum was that they've already changed the conversation in the country. I mean, they've started people talking about the 1% versus the 99%, and they've sort of entered the conversation, and I do think in some form they will last, that whether it's ongoing protests or some kind of a coalescing movement like the Tea Party. And something I'm worried about in response to your previous question is I'm worried that this is one more trend towards polarization in the country. The Tea Party is really polarizing, I think.
True.
And I can see Occupy Wall Street also becoming a polarizing force, representing moving towards representing the far left, and I'm kind of worried about that. And that's, like, we keep talking about Reach Out Wisconsin, like that's why I think this is what we're doing is really important to counter that.
It seems like the Republican Party has embraced a lot of the Tea Party ideals, and it has yet to be seen if the Democrats are going to do that with Occupy to look for helping out the base more than the wealthy.
It's interesting because when I talk to Andrew and I talk about, have you invited some of the Democrats, and he's like, we don't want them. We don't want them to come close to us or be part of our movement. So I don't know if maybe they will arise with a new party of their own.
You mean that Occupy Wall Street doesn't want the Democrats to be part of their movement?
Well, that was Andrew's personal opinion on
Uh-huh.
Occupy Wall Street, Madison. That was his thing to say. They want to be they want to be related to us, but we don't want them. We don't want anything to do with them. And so that was interesting that was his response to that. Like I said, as a Tea Partier, I think the Tea Parties have had their candidates who are already in Washington, and to me that was a very smart move. You actually, you get new people, probably fresher ideas, but they also know that the Tea Party is a big movement that they can do. They can make them or break them. So you go out there, you represent them. If you don't, you are out there. That's how it is.
Right.
And so they have, but then again, it goes back to they have been established for a couple of years now, and those are the goals, and then that's when they get their candidates. So to me, the Tea Party is going to have a big influence in 2012, and then. Like you said, the Republicans have embraced more the Tea Party, but they know, if they don't fall under, the ideals and the the goals that the Tea Party has, they're not going to be the candidate for a Tea Party.
Well, actually, the Republicans are looking for support from the Tea Party. They're all vying for the Tea Party support. So it's interesting that I would wonder if the Democrat candidates are wanting the Occupy Wall Street support or would shy away from it because of the image that it has in the public. I don't know that they would want that image with their candidacy. So it's interesting how we'll have to see how that plays out in the future, because right now it's not a good image in the news media right now to be a part of Occupy Wall Street.
But it wasn't the same with when the Tea Party started either. I mean, even like you say, a lot
No,
of
it
liberals,
wasn't. You're
a lot of
right.
liberals just think that Tea Party, we're a lot of wackos, and
Yes.
we're not. But so it might be that once they're established, like any other candidate, just starting with a group, you want to be backed out by brown bread, I don't know, society or something. What's the purpose of that? So I suppose, but then again, it's like it seems like some of the Occupy Wall Street don't want any relationship with them, just from one person that I learned. So
Right.
I don't know how that's gonna mesh up together.
Yeah, I remember he said, "We believe both the Democrats and the Republicans have been bought and sold by the banks." I wrote that down.
And
that was
I
a good
believe
line.
him. I mean, you can't trust a big politician any farther than you can throw them. I don't believe any of our politicians, except for maybe a handful, are truly free of corruption.
Well, and like I say, it goes back to, and then perhaps this is why we got involved in this too, because we want to start local. I mean, I don't want to go out there and try to think about, support somebody from Washington when I haven't actually met them. When you work locally with them, and then some of the politicians, and you say, really, that truly is a person. When you are outside of, a political rally or something like that, and you go on one-on-one with them, they do truly have feelings, and they're good people, and you meet them in other scenarios in our environment. And so that's what, when you say there are just a couple of people that, you might think that there are, that's when we were talking about with Sky, and I said, I don't think a politician is any better than me. I mean, I don't, because
I
to
don't
me,
either.
I think we kind of equal, And then I said, if that person knew my story, I bet they will be like drop underneath and say, Carol, oh my goodness, That's what I'm saying. I mean, and that's when I mean, then I know Ron's story, and it's like, oh, you have had a hard life, or you have worked hard, you have done this, you have accomplished this.
Right.
And so, yeah, we kind of, equal. So when I have worked with campaigns and everything, and then I meet the person one-on-one, and then I say, this person really has my vote. But I think it's easier to do it when you start on the local level. And that was one of the things that my husband inspired me when he said, we should not be looking at Washington or anything over there. We need to start local.
Right. Well, I think that if we've learned anything from this movement, it's that the people are taking a stand. I think that the people want their own voice heard, and they're not listening to Washington anymore. They're not waiting for the politicians to tell them what to do. They're taking action on their own. And so these two units, the Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party, are here to stay because they do represent the people, and the people are not going to wait for their politicians to go out and speak to them for them anymore. And I think this is what we've talked about today and decided, is that we've got the people's voice behind them, and they're going to speak for us. So we really appreciate you coming today and being here and listening to what you had to say. And we'd love to have you back again. And we thank you for coming to Who's Right today. And come back again. We will see you soon. Thank you very much for listening.